Hello, 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 hello. Hey, ChangeNOW, how you doing? I'm going to say hi to those of you all the way over here. Are you okay? Yes, and then I'll say hi to all of you all the way over here. Are you doing okay? Is this an unusual session where you've been asked a question and you're just not prepared for somebody to come on stage and actually ask you a question? Hello, welcome to this session. This one's entitled Companies Driving Change. Often in the space where we're talking about climate impact and change, the role of organizations is one that we look to very often. How are big companies and other companies able to get involved and drive change? They have the ability to change the way that we engage, the products we engage with, to lower emissions and have effectively a huge impact. In this session, we're going to be exploring a few circular economy options that are available. We're also going to be talking to a few newer startups that work with helping companies collaborate better. So we'll be looking at what options are available to organizations, big and small, who are looking to have a greater impact in the space of climate change. So are we ready to get started? That chick over there is. That's what I'm talking about. She's like, I'm ready, Lovelda, let's get this going. You might notice I'm a slightly different sort of moderator. It's going to be a little bit amped up around here. But you know what? We have to. This is a subject that we're all incredibly passionate about, so it makes sense that we bring some energy behind it. So to get us started, I have the CEO of the first 360-degree circular economy enterprise in the automotive world. It's a Renault Group company. Please welcome and give a warm round of applause to the CEO of The Future is Neutral, Jean-Philippe Bahuaud. Hey, I'm going to take this one. You took my seat!
No.
Yes, let's swap. Sorry, I'm that person. It's my side of the bed. Hi, Jean-Philippe. How are you doing?
Hi, I'm fine. Thank you very much, and thank you for inviting us to that wonderful topic and wonderful audience.
The Future is Neutral is a company that perhaps a lot of people in the audience here have not heard of before. Can you tell us a little bit about the work that you're doing there?
Sure. So The Future is Neutral actually is a new, recent company because we just launched it close to 6 months ago. And this is an affiliate of the Renault Group, and this is exclusively targeted at addressing the issue of circular economy in the automotive space. So our focus is really about taking existing cars, old cars, recycling them in order to make sure that we can create new vehicles out of the parts and materials that are used in those vehicles.
So, part of the Renault Group. How and why would Renault get involved in this?
Well, actually, it's not necessarily something that is completely new for the Renault Group, because the activity of recycling is an area where Renault Group has actually invested a bit more than 10 years ago. But we had a few initiatives here and there within the Renault Group, and we decided last year to create an umbrella and to provide a roadmap, a direction to those initiatives under the name of The Future is Neutral. And this is why today this company is operating as an active holding of operational businesses that are already up and running in the field, in France, in Europe, in order to take plastics, copper, exhaust pipes from old vehicles and to put them back into the production of new vehicles. And you know why we wanted to do that? It's because in 2022, it was actually a tough year for the automotive industry in one sense, because I think in Europe, the total amount of vehicles produced were around 11 million. Okay, usually it's more around 16, 17 million. So in year 2022, 11 million vehicles were produced in Europe, new vehicles. And that same year, exactly the same amount of vehicles, 11 millions, reached their end of life. So what it means is that if we're good at what we do, we should be able to take the most out of old vehicles and put the recycled materials inside the production of new vehicles. 11 million old vehicles, 11 million new vehicles. That's an enormous amount of materials and parts that are available for new production. And we really want to focus on making sure that the automotive industry actually decreases the amount of virgin material used in the production of new parts. So that's the target, that's our focus, and it will help from an environmental standpoint, from a supply chain standpoint, from geopolitical concern standpoint, and in many other, I would say, criteria.
So a few things that you said that are super exciting. One is there was work Renault was doing already, and rather than having it hidden within the business in some regard, what you did was effectively say, we're going to take all of these projects and we're going to give them a space to live and breathe and have budget and focus. But the other thing that you said that I found quite fascinating was around the fact that there were 11 million cars made and sold, and then 11 million that came to scrap. Is this the reason why you've chosen this approach when the rest of the world is looking at electric vehicles? It seems like everybody else is interested in the move to electric. That's the way that we go if we're in the automotive space and we're going down the sustainability route. Why have you chosen to look at the circular economy as an approach?
Well, because the overarching goal of all of that is basically to reduce the carbon footprint. There is no question about that. But in the field of automotive, to reduce the amount of CO2 emitted, you can work on the product itself. An electric vehicle will definitely emit less CO2 than a diesel engine or a petrol engine. So that's one very important way to tackle the issue. But the other way to do it is to take care of all the rest of the vehicle, which is not necessarily the engine or the battery, but the steel, the copper, the plastics, the palladium, platinum, rhodium that you can find in the exhaust pipes. And at the moment, if you and I were taking a helicopter, and if we had to fly over Europe, we would take a look at all those vehicles that are driving, and all those amounts of, steel, plastics, engines, and so on. And the good news would be that on that picture, each vehicle would be 85% recyclable. But for the production of one new vehicle, you still need around 70% of virgin material. Okay? So, in other words, very good news, the automotive industry is highly recyclable, but there is an enormous amount of progress to be done in order to reduce the amount of virgin material. And virgin material also addresses the issue of CO2. So that's why we're targeted at doing that, and that only when the other companies, the other OEMs and other suppliers and the other industries are also targeting at reducing CO2 through changing the product. I'm a bit technical, I'm not sure if I'm getting across.
I mean, you bring up such a big point, because we've been sucked into go electric, it's better, buy an electric car. But I think the thing we haven't been thinking about is what is happening to the vehicles. And when you say 85% is recyclable materials, even if we produce an electric vehicle, presumably we're still using the same types of materials.
Well, exactly, right? I mean, imagine you have on your left you have an electric vehicle with a battery. On your right you have a diesel engine, like a vehicle with a diesel engine. Now remove the battery, remove the diesel engine. You end up having still, 800 kilograms of steel, 400 kilograms of plastics, copper everywhere. We don't want those materials and those parts to go anywhere else than back into the production of new vehicles. That's our focus. That's what we do. It's not a promise. We started doing it already. We have to date recycled more than 1 million catalysts. We have recycled more than 14 million tons of steel. We do that not necessarily only within Renault Group. Renault Group is not, a waste management company, so we have a number of partnerships, and that's why the Future is Neutral is an active holding of companies. We co-work with, for example, Suez since a very long time. So we have partners everywhere to do that, but the Future is Neutral is making sure that we actually close the loop on all of those very important materials that we use every day in our cars.
So Jean-Philippe, all of this sounds fantastic. 85% of a car is recyclable. You're doing the good work to figure out how we recycle stuff and reuse it, so we're not throwing this stuff away and then taking virgin materials. But the automotive industry is a commercial industry. How cost effective is it to take out the plastic and take out the steel and reuse it?
So I'll just give you a few numbers because you're absolutely right. If we want to make those activities sustainable, those activities should be sustainable enough or profitable enough to, do the long run. Let's take two examples, one in materials and one in parts. For the materials, actually recycling plastics today is already a network of players that are profitable. I mean, they do a margin. There are companies out there that actually make a margin out of recycling plastic. So it does work. The challenge here is not necessarily whether it's profitable or not. The challenge is to have a repeatable amount of plastic from identical sources at scale for the needs of production of new vehicles. So profitability is not necessarily where it's a challenge. The challenge is more, do we have enough sourcing? Do we have enough networks in order to collect the right amount of plastics in order to create new vehicles? Take the second example, parts. Let's go back to that, diesel engine that sits in an old vehicle. That engine may have, 150, 200,000 kilometers under the belt. It's old, it's tired. Usually, it goes to the scraps and then we forget about it. It goes back in the forms of different things. We started doing a remanufacturing of those engines. And a remanufactured engine, so basically just to make it very simple, you take the engine, you take everything from the engine that still works, which by the way is around 80% of the amount of the engine, and you just replace 20% of the moving pieces in the engine, and you have a brand new engine ready for 150 or 200,000 kilometers.
Wow.
Again. Is it profitable? Yes. Is it good for the client? Yes. For the final customer? Yes. Today, I mean, I'm seeing, I don't know how many people there is in the room, but if you go back to your dealer after that meeting, please ask for a remanufactured engine instead of a new one. And it will be better for your business because it's cheaper, and still, it's allowing companies to actually make a profit out of that in a decent manner. So it's a virtuous circle for everyone.
It sounds similar to what we're getting used to doing with our mobile phones. What do they call it? A reconditioned phone, where you don't need to throw the whole thing out. They just change the bits that aren't working rather
exactly
than throw the whole thing out. On a practical level, we're saying recycle, have a circular economy. How does that work? There's so many different moving parts in a vehicle. You've got the chassis, you've got the engine. On a practical level, how do we actually make this a reality?
So that's where the partnerships actually kick in. Because in order to be efficient and to collect massively, we need to have the partners that are able to do that, and we need to have the locations in order to collect from those locations. So I'll just give you an example, okay? Take one of the company that we have in our portfolio, which is called Buncomenor, okay, which is a company co-owned by Suez and Renault, more largely owned by Suez than Renault, by the way. But that company is in the field of recycling steel, okay? So everywhere in the world, you have factories that produce steel parts. Mm-hmm. In the production of those steel parts, some things fall on the side, they're called scraps. And that company, Buncomenor, is actually able to collect the scraps from those different production lines and to put them back in the furnaces for the steel makers. Okay? So that's one example of how it works. Another example is the collection of exhaust pipes. Now, let's zoom in France. You have in France roughly, I would say, between 1,500 and 1,800 dismantlers. So people that are able to take an old car, to dismantle the parts, and to sort the good ones from the bad ones, and to treat the materials. Those are 1,500 collection points for old parts and materials. What we do in the Future is Neutral is that we have a network of collectors that are actually going to collect those materials in those points, buy the materials, buy the parts, and actually handle the recycling process through the different stages in order to make sure that the final stage of the recycling goes back into a new vehicle process. So that's the know-how that has been developed during the last, I would say, 10, 15 years, and that we now put to a different scale with the Future is Neutral by providing them with a master plan, a roadmap, some financial investments, and the right partners.
Just in that description alone, it sounds like it's complex. There's lots of different moving parts. Who are some of the key stakeholders, just to take a component like an exhaust and turn that into, to create circularity? When we're starting to think of a vehicle with multiple moving parts, what are the sorts of what are the kinds of stakeholders we need to be considering to be able to say 1 million cars made, and we just turn that into another million cars?
Well, first, the first stakeholder is the individual itself. It's you, it's me, it's you in the room. When we get rid of a vehicle, we need to be mindful of where that vehicle is going. Because if you take the wrong decision at that time, the vehicle is going to end up in the wrong network. Okay, so that's one decision point. So the best way to know how to do it is to either go to your dealer and ask what's the right way to dispose of your vehicle, or there are other ways that we're going to talk about in the coming months within the Future is Neutral and its affiliates. So that's point number one. Point number two, it's all the OEMs, I would say the actors, the stakeholders of the automotive industry. So we're talking here about the OEMs like Renault, the OEMs like Stellantis, Volkswagen Group, and so on and so forth. And all of us have a responsibility in order to get rid and dispose of those materials and old vehicles, okay? The Future is Neutral is an affiliate of the Renault Group, but it does not serve the interests of the Renault Group. It is a company in which Renault Group has invested that serves the entire industry. And to answer your question about the stakeholders, our customers are you, Renault Group, Stellantis, Volkswagen, all the other suppliers, the tier ones, tier twos in the automotive space, the insurers, the dismantlers, and the waste managers. All of that ecosystem have to work hand in hand in order to make sure that the amount of material actually goes back in that loop. So we're kind of, we see ourselves as a way to provide solutions to complex problems in that space.
You're talking about solutions to complex problems. Do we think regulation is going to come in that's going to force the hands of other equipment manufacturers? Do we think this is coming, and other manufacturers are going to be left no choice but to get ahead of things? Yes,
so regulation is definitely here. I mean, in France, it's called the AGEC law, Loi Anti-Gaspillage. This is driving, how OEMs are going to behave in the future, actually in very near future. In Europe, it's going to be the same. Batteries recycling, we haven't talked about the electric batteries themselves, but the recycling of batteries is actually a very important topic. We are working hard in order to launch a recycling company in that space, but there will be regulation to incorporate recycled cobalt, nickel, lithium into the batteries, and definitely regulation will help set the tone of what needs to be done. We see that as an opportunity, definitely.
You speak a lot about collaboration. How do, we've got a lot of business owners in the room, or people who are engaged in businesses in the automotive and other spaces. How do other companies get involved? Because it's not just the automotive space. You've spoken about a number of different other stakeholders who are involved in making sure that we achieve circularity. If they're hearing this and they're thinking, ooh, we've got an opportunity, how does that work? So
first, I think in order to get involved, you need to see the light. You need to see, where, I mean, not the light, but, you need to understand why it's interesting. And in the field of automotive is interesting because the level of specifications of the materials are so high that there is value, right? And so as a business owner, maybe in the room, you're asking yourself, oh, should I sell my plastics to, I don't know, bottle makers or automotive suppliers? And potentially automotive suppliers are going to see more value in what you bring than some other players. So that's point number one, seeing the value. I think that the second way to interact with the Future is Neutral is, come knock on our door. We have a website. You could be a customer, you could be a partner, you could be a stakeholder, you could be a solution provider for the portfolio of businesses that we're currently having and that we're currently also doubling. So in the next few years, there will be twice more businesses in our portfolio than we have today. So definitely, come connect with us. We're definitely in the need.
Jean-Philippe, this has been fabulous. Please give him an incredible warm round of applause.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of the show. Bye.
So that was our first session. Now moving in to have another discussion with two incredible individuals to really unpackage how organizations can get involved in driving change. And what are the structures? What do you need to have in place? How do you collaborate? Where do you even start? To help us with that discussion, please welcome the CEO of ClimateSeed, Sebastien Nunes, and the head of Earth Plus, the largest soil and CO2 cleanup in history with nature, Elena Doms. Hello, hello, welcome.
Hello.
Did I miss the dress code?
Yeah.
Yes, you did.
Have you noticed? I've got the blue polka dots, but I didn't get the memo with the rest of it for this session. So excuse the yellow skirt, but we shall continue. We can still be friends. Sebastien, for those people who've never heard of ClimateSeed before, can you maybe give us a little bit of background about the work that you do?
No, I can't.
Oh, okay. Well, that was the end of that.
I'm going to do that. Yeah. So ClimateSeed is a French company that combines people and technology to help the clients in their journey to decarbonization. So from measuring the carbon footprint of a company, a fund, or even an event like ChangeNOW. So we are the partner of ChangeNOW for the carbon footprint assessment. We help them to reduce their carbon footprint and then help them to contribute to projects that are removing CO2, avoiding CO2 emissions, and help them to communicate the right way.
Oh, fantastic. So it's all the things to do with how you measure the impact you're having, different initiatives that they can do to reduce their footprint, but also being able to report back. So that kind of full circle.
Exactly.
And Elena, Earth Plus, what's the work that you're doing?
So at Earth Plus, we are doing something that was thought to be impossible just a few months ago. We figured out a way to clean soils from forever chemicals with nature, remove a lot of CO2 in the process, and lock this CO2 into circular construction materials. Think of it as indeed the largest soil and CO2 cleanup in history with nature, kind of like the next ocean cleanup. We're also working with companies and cities to reduce their emissions in a very creative way. We work on unmanaged lands, on industry lands. We plant there as well, remove CO2 on massive scale in places they even haven't thought of. And then we again lock it into carbon removal projects.
So because the audience are from a very vast backdrop here, sometimes there's lots of terms that we use a lot, but some of us who are really deep in the space totally understand it, and there's others who are kind of like, we hear the term a lot and we just pretend we know what it means. We're just nodding along, but we have no clue. So when we're talking about reducing a company's carbon footprint, what exactly do we mean by that? Is it just how much time they're on the road?
Yeah, so actually, the first thing that we need to do is to define the perimeter of what we want to assess. So really the idea is to understand what are the different parts of the company that are emitting some CO2. So really the key thing is to measure, to determine what we want to do, what we want to measure. And then what we do is basically gathering data to understand, well, basically where are the different sources of CO2. And then we have something very typical from our industry, which is emission factors. So we get the data, and we try to understand this particular data, what does it mean in terms of CO2 emissions? And that's pretty much it. And then as soon as we have it, we can identify the pockets where we can implement some or take some actions, implement some really things to reduce the carbon footprint. But basically, that's assessing what the company is doing and what is the CO2 that is behind this activity.
And so that's not just within the company. Are you then looking at their suppliers and the full supply chain as well? Yeah,
so the idea is to have a global understanding of the carbon footprint of the company. So again, let's come back to the definition of the perimeter. If you want to analyze the carbon footprint of this glass, it's just one product. But the idea is to have the wider picture that is possible in order to have the better assessment of the carbon footprint of a company. So from the factory, the suppliers, the impact of the employees. So really the idea is to have a global picture, so involving as much as we can all the ecosystem of the company.
So it's a huge footprint. Has he missed anything, Elena?
I think he's very skilled. But I would say it is a huge footprint. And actually, I really like the definition of net zero that I've heard, that we often focus on the companies being net zero, but we actually have to be net zero as a society. So it's really important for companies not just to see how they become net zero themselves, but how they collaborate with their whole ecosystem to make sure that others transition to net zero too. And how they also make sure they're nature positive. Just coming out of Innovation Zero in London, Johan Rockstrom and Sir David King were speaking there, and they were saying that it's really important to reduce carbon rapidly, but also restore nature, because that gives us this balance to our ecosystem.
So rather than just looking at a carbon footprint, it's taking it further to say, how do we get to a point of being net zero? On that point, what is the role of partners and collaborators? Because the scope you just described, Sebastien, is huge. You know, you're looking at what you're doing within the company, you're looking at your whole supply chain, you're looking at how your employees are getting to the company. Surely you can't just do that internally. Like, what is the role of other partners and collaborators in supporting organizations and moving forward?
So yeah, the idea is to, you have on one side the carbon footprint, but the role of the different stakeholders of the company is to help the company to measure the carbon footprint, to help the top management to set targets, ambitious targets, and everybody has a role to play. So in terms of data collection, in terms of putting pressure to top management just to set, let's say, concrete actions, so to implement concrete actions. So I would say every stakeholders have a role to play, not only in helping gathering the data, but challenging the company, helping them to set some ambitious targets, let's say.
Elena, what do you think the role of collaborators and partners is? Because the work that you're doing is slightly different. It's not necessarily the management, but you're giving organizations a different route to effectively solve the same problem.
Well, first of all, let's admit ESG and all of this, it's hard, right? It's a headache. First of all, you need to know a bunch of knowledge things and science, right? Then you have a whole bunch of regulations, the most complex regulations ever seen, and they just keep coming, you know, new. And as a company, you might have a lot of headache dealing with that. So partners are there to make companies' life easier. So Sebastien, for example, he can help calculate the footprint and finally know what are the activities that are causing the most emissions and where to put your efforts in. Other companies like us, we can find creative ways in order to reduce the footprint, and we are doing this for companies, so it's very simple, you know, headache taken away. We are just reducing the emissions for you, and you even haven't thought of it before. So yeah, that's why innovative solutions are also really important, because they're helping to make companies' life easier, and I'm sure a lot of companies are looking for this type of solutions.
So it's all about, rather than reinventing the wheel by yourself, it's understanding there are organizations out there whose role is to help connect you, network you, support you in making the right decision. What do you think the role of technology is, though? Because but let's face it, in every space we want to throw a bit of technology at it. We're trying to fix something, let's throw some tech at it. Where does technology fit in supporting companies to really make the sorts of changes that we need them to make nowadays?
As you said, the work is huge, the amount of work is huge. So that's why we want to use technology in order to help ease and smooth the process. So it's a good way to connect the people, gather everybody around the mission, and make sure then that you are leveraging the tool to gather the information, make all the calculation automatically in order to ease the process and go viral, let's say. Help, you know, it's a good way as well to help to promote what you're doing by leveraging technology. You can, you know, spread, let's say, the word on what you're doing easily across the organization and all the ecosystem, suppliers, clients, investors as well.
So that reporting piece, if you're using the right sort of technology, becomes a gazillion times easier. That's a real number, by the way, gazillion. Elena, from your perspective, are you utilizing technology? Do you think it has a role in supporting companies, or is it just something nice?
So yes, we are using technology. In fact, we are building our impact dashboard together with Quest Studio, and we want to showcase our work transparently. We want to show where we are cleaning soils, where we are removing CO2, what were the concentrations of pollutants before and after, how much CO2 removed, how much products and jobs for local circular economy we created. So I think transparency is key, and that's where technology is there. Also in terms of carbon reduction and carbon removals, to avoid, you know, those phantom credits and all the scandals, we need investments going into nature restoration, and that's why we need transparency of the technology there. But it's an enabler, right? We sometimes think technology will solve everything. We think engineering will solve everything. But let's face it, WWF just pushed a report that in the last 10 years, nature removed 53% of our extra greenhouse gas emissions. Nature did that. So while we have to have technology to enable transparency, we also really, really, really need to restore nature, because that's our best ally and it has a lot of solutions.
So technology, when used well, especially in the area of transparency, is really helpful. We speak a lot, and we mentioned it earlier, about how difficult it can be when we're looking at carbon footprints to measure and to have impacts, because it's so broad. Where do companies even start? So there might be people in the room here who are like, this sounds like a brilliant idea. I've been on it for ages. Where do I start? Where do I start?
First thing is to come to our booth, and we help them to measure the carbon footprint as ClimateSeed, better called ClimateSeed. Now, honestly, I think that the first thing is to take a part of the company, a product, an event, a business line, and to work with a limited scope and try to do the first exercise on a smaller scale, but make sure that you go and do everything by the book, let's say, being helped by someone that is, let's say, an expert. But start small, and then you can, you know, build on it and go wider.
So don't try and do the whole organization in one go. Pick a little scope and go a little bit deeper. Elena, is that the approach that you'd suggest as well, or is there something extra you would add to that in terms of a sensible, easy, accessible starting point for companies?
Well, I think indeed they should first go to the booth of ClimateSeed to understand their emissions.
She's not being paid.
Hopefully, right? Maybe you don't know that, right? So first you need to understand where the emissions are coming from, and first also what these emissions represent, right? Because we are talking a lot about tons of CO2, but what is even a ton of CO2? It's 6,000 kilometers driven in a diesel car. But as a company, you need to understand where the emissions are coming from in order to be able to take action, because then you can focus your action on those things that will bring the most results. And afterwards, after you've come to Sebastien, you come to us, and we do extra magic for you that removes additional emissions as well.
There are lots of cool solutions out of which the roles that you're both in means you've come across a lot of interesting solutions. I know, Elena, you've got some yourself. Can you give us some examples of how companies are actually driving change and reducing their CO2 emissions? I mean, we talk a lot about the problems and the challenges, but where are you seeing success? What are people doing that's working super well?
So actually, let's take, for example, ChangeNOW. So they started to work with us and to understand the footprint of the event, and then work year after year on a plan to reduce the emissions. So try to build an ecosystem to help them reducing the impact of this beautiful event. And actually, I think that's the key thing, is to make sure that you have the right partners to help you achieve what you want to do, and take time. For sure, it takes time. So to understand that you will need time year after year to implement what you want to implement and have a better footprint. So I think ChangeNOW is the right example. They are assessing their footprints each and every year, try to improve what they are doing, and that's it.
And I like that you say it's not all at once. You can see this as a multi-stage, multi-year project. You know, assessment might take a year to kind of understand where you are right now, and then it's just chipping away to find different things that you can do to improve.
Yes, and it's super important as well to build trust with the participants, with the audience, with the clients, investors, because you show each and every year that you're improving what you're doing, and it's really important.
Elena, what examples have you seen of where companies have been really successful at driving change?
So I will give two. First one is MasterCard. I spent 11 years there, fantastic company. They did calculate their carbon footprint, set the goals and everything else, but then they indeed went beyond to see how they can work together with their whole ecosystem, because they are at the heart of e-commerce. how can they work with all of their partners to enable this transition. So they have a lot of projects like Priceless Planet with tree planting and all kinds of other projects that enable partners to reduce their footprint too. And the second one is Cordel Group. So it's a group of construction companies, 170 companies, and they are really passionate about building a CO2 neutral future. They are our first partner and supporter. They truly believed in our idea, and they are implementing our products within their industry as well. And they are innovating on a lot of fronts in terms of that. So companies that are really coming to innovative solutions, believing them, trying them, implementing them inside, I think they're really pioneers in terms of change.
Those are some really great examples, and people can say those are big companies. And we know that there are a lot of the vast majority of companies are not multinational companies. They're not, they're not events of this sort of size and scale. There's smaller organizations that might be employing 40 or 50 people. How do those companies get started? What can they do where perhaps they don't have the big budgets to have a full assessment and they don't even know where to start? Any help for those companies, because there are a lot of them out there?
The first thing is that even a small company is working for big corporates that might want to assess their carbon footprint. So their clients may want to have an understanding of the carbon impact of their products. They may have some investors that want to have an understanding of the carbon footprint as well, and even employees that want to see their company engage in the fight against climate change. So they have to do something, even if it's a small company. I understand that it can be seen as difficult. I would not say difficult, but technical. So that's why they need to have some experts. And the first 2 or 3 exercises are technical. They need some help for sure. But let's take it as an engagement initiative. It will involve employees, suppliers, maybe clients. So it's a good way to engage and to promote sustainability within the company. So again, start small, ask some experts to help, and build on it.
Elena?
You're looking at me.
I am.
So I think as small companies or even as individuals, sometimes we think we don't matter much and that what we do will not bring a lot of impact. But that's not true, because every big societal change started with a small group of people. And in fact, there is a study on the societal tipping points as well, that we need just 10% of very dedicated minority to turn the whole society around. Small companies, they are 90% of companies worldwide. They impact lives of 2 billion of people. So for them, it's as important to work on climate as for any big company as well. And I feel like sustainability is such a great area for collaboration. Finally, we are putting aside competition, us against them, we are trying to work together to solve one common challenge. And there are a lot of partners out there that help small companies do that too. Maybe it's not a full-scale investigation like they do for big companies, but there are definitely solutions that just do quick assessments and already help to start making those steps.
And what are you excited about for organizations? So as you're talking and saying this is about collaboration and it's about working together, are there some ways that people can start collaborating and working together now? Companies are made of individuals. Are there some really tangible examples that you can say to people in the room today, this is what you can go out and start doing immediately?
You want to think about your answer? I was before during the day at the meetup of Ellen MacArthur Foundation, and I thought they had really, really practical, tangible way of doing that. So they split everyone in groups, so a business, a startup, an enabler, and somebody else, I don't remember. And we all had to go in groups where all 4 were present. And then after a pitch of a startup, everyone had to discuss how they can support this startup and also how they can support circular economy. So I think whenever we meet people here, there's a vast, amazing majority of solutionists, right? It's a fantastic place to be. It's like a place of hope. So for me, a practical one would be to talk to as many people as possible, and when talking, to think together of how we could support each other.
On my side, I would say make sure that you help people be creative in the fight against climate change. Give them space to do that. So we have the example. We have our main shareholder, AXA, and you see that there is a space for creativity. In the, climate change is within the DNA of this group. Make sure that we find some solution for the clients, and they give space for creativity in this field. So encourage creativity, innovation. That's what we see in our shareholder, and basically we are super happy to have this shareholder supporting us, supporting our small company, you know, because creativity is an important thing in order to fight against climate change. It's important for AXA as well.
I love what you're saying there about being very creative, because I think, especially when you're thinking of a big problem, it's almost as if you want to sit down and say, give me a big solution to the problem. But often we forget that within our communities, there are a lot of people with ideas. Should we just create space for some of those ideas to come to the surface?
Space, money as well, in order to go ahead because having ideas is good, but implement the ideas, it's harder, more difficult, but more important, I'd say. So we need time, energy, money for innovation.
Speaking about money, when we think about doing something different, I'm going to ask the question, we can sit and say it's really important that companies get behind making changes for the planet, and companies are commercial entities. Is doing good for the planet also commercially good for business?
Of course, yes.
How did I know you were going to say that?
So actually, we are talking about sustainability. So, and behind sustainability, you have the fact that you make money for a long time. So, if you are defending, protecting your planet, basically, it's an insurance for being sure that you will be doing some business for a long time. So that's first thing. Then, as you said, the amount of work is huge. So there is a lot of people that are in need of help. That's why we are here, actually. So yeah, I really think that you can do business, you can earn money decently by helping the world.
We are seeing a shift nowadays as well to buyers being more interested in the initiatives of companies. Are you seeing that in the work that you're doing, Elena? That organizations that are truly doing well, that individuals are now more looking to see what are companies doing?
So definitely yes, but a very interesting research. It was shared, I believe, by Lidl in Belgium. They did the research and they wanted to see if sustainability is a primary driver of consumers. Now, what they realized is it is not. Consumers are looking into the quality of the product. Like, for example, if you would buy Apple AirPods, right? You are going for the quality and the brand and everything else. And then if Apple says, oh, but they're also sustainable, then you're like, I'm your most loyal customer. So in terms of that, customers are still looking for great products. Sustainability is a nice loyalty component to it.
And in a world where people will move from one company to the other very quickly, it's an avenue for building brand loyalty.
So, yeah.
No, it's absolutely. And also what really driven companies can do, like I love the example from Lidl, when they did that research, they realized that they only want to put sustainable fish in their supermarket, so only fair trade bananas, so that there is no other choice, you know? And then consumers are also supporting that. But yeah, don't get me wrong, of course, consumers are now pressuring more than ever, and that's why companies are also changing.
If I may add, look at the evolution of regulation. There is always more and more regulation around sustainability. Why are there so many regulations being implemented today? Because there is a pressure from political. And why the political are pressuring for more regulation? Because the private society is pressuring the political. So that's everything is coming from I would say the bottom. It's not the right word, but from the people.
I actually want to add on that because I think that was fantastic. And that's why Earth Plus is also here, because it started with a big scandal in Belgium around forever chemical contamination. And it was all over the news. It was found very high in people's blood. They couldn't eat food from their gardens, pick eggs from their chickens. they didn't allow kids to play outside. It was all over the news, all over the TV, and that's why, that's why there was this pilot in Belgium to start cleaning that up. That's why the government is now creating funds to do that, is looking into that and looking into helping companies change as well to clean up that pollution and to avoid it in the future. So absolutely, the pressure does come from people.
And with people driving and an opportunity there for organizations as well, not just to do the right thing, but also to benefit from doing the right thing, what would be, just as we wrap up, what would be your call to action for people listening today? What do they do as a result of this so that we have more companies doing good all the time? It's just part of how companies do business.
If you have an idea that basically is changing your company and to be more in line with to be engaged, let's say, in the fight against climate change, sit in the front of the door of a manager and insist to implement this idea. That's basically what I did when I was working in the bank for ClimateSeed. I'm super happy today because I pressured for 2 years to have ClimateSeed live, and I think that everybody should do that in a company. That's my
so every individual in a company, if you've got an idea, don't sit on it. Don't sit on it. Anything to add, Elena? What would be your call to action for people?
So I absolutely agree. I did the same at MasterCard. I went to management with all kinds of great ideas and I just started working on them. Every job can be a sustainability job. If you want to make impact, just go into it. There is a bunch of opportunities within the company and outside of the company. And for companies, sometimes they think that, oh, regulation, compliance, this is all a mess. I just want to comply and sleep well. Well, for companies, it's a shift of perspective of looking at that as an opportunity that you don't want to miss out. We are moving into a better future. We are moving into a cleaner future where we are healthier, we're happier, we work less. So for companies, it's important to consider this not as a headache, but as opportunity. And then that shift of perspective really makes them look into a new business case for a better society.
Fantastic. I'm afraid we're out of time. I'd love to be able to talk to both of you for a lot longer. Sebastien and Elena.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you both. We are almost there. So we've had a look at some examples in the automotive space. We've talked about collaboration and what's available to companies. Now we're going to look at a specific way of being able to drive change as an organization. Our next speaker is passionate about the circular economy and has co-founded a company called ZAC at the age of 22. It has grown to be the leading company in France in the fight against waste of electronic products. It's been acquired by the Manut Group in February of 2022, and he's now the Circular Economy Director at Manut. Please give a warm round of applause for Pierre-Emmanuel Saint-Esprit. Hey, how are you? I'm really good.
I love the way you say my name in English, actually.
You do? I was just adding a little flair to it. People think when you speak French, you add flair. I'm adding an English flair. That's what I'm going to call it. You know a lot about the circular economy. You've been in the circular economy. It's your thing. When we say circular economy, what exactly are we referring to? Is it the same as recycling?
Well, not at all. And you're right, it's very important to go back to definition, as a lot of innovations today, a lot of impactful innovations. What is concretely circular economy? I would say very basically that is to fulfill societal needs, such as, I don't know, to eat a building, to drive ourselves, something we need as humans, with the lowest impact possible on natural resources. So we are living in a linear model today, where we extract new natural resources, we take, then we make products, and then directly everything goes to waste. A lot of figures and very interesting examples have been given today. For example, we use a drill for 13 minutes in a lifetime of a drill. 81% of the plastic produced each year becomes waste in a year. It's absolutely absurd. And the idea is to reduce this linear model to be able to shift toward a more circular economy. So how do we do that? Circular economy, it's 3 basic pillars. The first one is really to eradicate at the design phase waste and pollution. So this is the definition of the Ellen MacArthur Foundation that's been quoted before. The idea is if you don't design the products the right way to be durable, then it's too late. It's not feasible to repair, to to collect a product and to refurbish a product if it has not been, as we say, eco-conceive or eco-designed. The second pillar is about keeping products and materials in use as long as possible. So once you have extracted the natural resources, once you have done these jobs, your role as a company is to be sure that we will have the maximum efficiency with the products and it will last as long as possible. We make as much as possible business without extracting new natural resources. And the last one, the last pillar, is about regenerating the natural resources because we are consuming 1.7 planets a year. And if we do that, if we build ecosystem allowing the planet to regenerate itself, maybe we have a future. So it's really a methodology, it's not a sector at all. It's not about recycling, it's a big methodology to reinvent any business model while reducing at the maximum the impact on natural resources.
I'm so glad I asked you that question because I think sometimes we can think of it very similar to recycling. It's about keeping something going all the time. But for you to say, actually, we need to start at the design phase to design something that we can then reuse and use for longer. You are a particular advocate of the circular economy methodology because you say it's not a sector, so thank you for clearing that up. It's not a sector, the circular economy methodology. Why do you think it presents such a significant opportunity for organizations when there's other methodologies that they could be looking at instead?
Well, if we look at the will to become carbon neutral at the European level, 2050, the Green Deal and so on, we talk a lot, and it's a great thing, about energy, about energetical transition. But if we look at the figures, at the right data, we can see that 45% on the CO2 emissions we need to reduce to achieve, for example, the Paris Agreement, so stay below 1.5 degrees. This is directly linked to circular economy because it's about extracting natural resources and producing. So if we don't address, it's like two legs. If we don't address circular economy, it's not possible for a lot of companies to be really carbon neutral. If we look at our specific examples, at Manutan, we are a distributor, so we buy products, we stock products, and then we sell products. 90% of our carbon footprint is scope-free. Scope-free, directly linked, of course, to what I've said before, to the kind of product we sell. So if we don't choose circular economy, we're not credible. It's totally greenwashing, and it's not possible to achieve its objectives. In 1972, the year of the Club of Rome, because I know that I couldn't attend, but we had the pleasure to have this incredible person for the Club of Rome this morning. In 1972, we extracted 28.6 gigatons a year of natural resources to then fuel, I would say, the linear economy. After the Paris Agreement, it was 100 gigatons. And we are going, if we don't change, towards figure like 150 gigatons in 2050. So if we don't tackle this issue, if we don't keep products and materials in use, one more time, because when we extract natural resources, we emit a lot of greenhouse gases, just not possible to do a real transition. So we need to use this methodology.
So there's a huge opportunity in terms of being able to create a big impact with a single methodology. What is it about this methodology that, you know, how do you apply a circular economy methodology to be really effective?
Well, I think I'm really convinced it's that you need to put circular economy at the heart of your business model. Of course, you can have a lot of impactful actions on the side, but if you really want to have an impact, you need to use the same reporting, you need to use the same indicators that your own company does. Before I was a startup, now I'm working at Manutan, we have, of course, monitoring, we have quarter business plan review, we need to fulfill business plans, and if we don't have, I would say, an impact turnover, if we don't use the same terms, the same methodology to assess the business, then we're not changing anything. So we really need to link the reduction of your CO2 emissions and your impact on the planet to your business. And this is the way you're going to use all the energy inside the company to fulfill this mission. I think this is really the most important things to be effective. Then you have, I would say, the importance to embark everybody inside your company. So I said that circular economy is not a sector, but we say it's not at all a department as well. We don't have a circular economy department at Manutan.
Really?
No, not at all. We don't have that. I am in charge of a specific service that we sell, the collection of used electronic products. It's not a department, it's not a support function, I would say. And if we want to do circular economy, we need every department to do so, and this is exactly what is happening. We have, of course, the supply. It's the most important thing because we are a distributor. So there is the offer, and they have a plan with the transport, with a responsible offer, so to be able to sell second-hand products, refurbished products, eco-conceived products with 25% out of recycled materials. Every, I would say, single team and department needs to have a plan, and we need to adapt it to the plan to use all the collective force to do a transition. So you need to embark everybody. It could be also the marketing. You need to create desire on durable products. You need to create desire, of course, on circular economy services. It's not at all a single topic for one single person or team.
So it needs to be, for it to be effective with a circular economy approach, it's not about having it sidelined and it's a department or it needs to be fully integrated into the reporting, into the team, into the culture.
Exactly, and this is why I think it was a good idea to merge with Manutan, because it's quite different from, I would say, the startup perspective. At least I speak from 6 to 7 years ago, when you need to have a very important growth in your corridor, I would say, than to be to interest more and more clients, but a bit alone. You're not creating ecosystems, you're not creating links. But right now with circular economy is to see where we can be more efficient by creating links and partnerships. So you need every team really to be able to do that. And then to be effective as well, you need to, I would say, to monitor the big trends of the economy. The circular economy is a new economy. And for example, we are helped a lot by the regulation and the regulation. So my previous colleagues spoke a lot about it before. At the French level, with the anti-waste law, we have an article in the anti-waste law that said that 25% of the products, of a lot of products bought by local authorities have to be circular. We have a division dealing with local authorities, so of course it's a big help to have an effective circular economy and profitable circular economy. And it's also about offer and demand. It's not a big word, I would say. Of course, if we are lacking new natural resources, the price is going to go up, and the price of circular or recycled natural resources is going to become more important. So it's about supply chain continuity. We have seen this trend a lot with the energy during the war of Ukraine, of course, but it's exactly the same for a lot of potential natural resources. Pay attention to that, monitor the prices of natural resources. A lot of these are going to disappear, and if you don't look at opportunities and potential replacements of that, your business model is not going to be profitable at all in the coming years.
Well, with materials going, you make a very good point. I mean, unless you have some way of being more efficient with the materials that you use, your costs are going to go up. We heard earlier about circularity in the automotive space, but what you're saying here is it can be, because it's a methodology, it can be applied to all different types of industries and sectors. Can you perhaps bring that to life for us for a little bit, maybe with a few examples?
Yes, well, it's a big area for innovation. So for all entrepreneurs, of course, it's something really desirable, very exciting. We talk a lot, of course, about the big problems we have, but we need to create, I will say, a new social pact around that, a new area, one more time, for creation. And basically, you have the linear model. If you look at the circular model, you can have innovation throughout the whole life cycle of the products. So first, about eco-conception. So I will mention a lot of companies presented today. We have a big circular economy booth, so do not hesitate to go there. A company called Fermat, for example, they create a new carbon fiber to replace a lot of plastics in the automotive industry. If we speak about Manutan, we created a table made out 98% of recycled materials. So basically, we don't use at all new natural resources. And we made that thanks to a partnership with a company called Ares that help people to get a job. It's called professional insertion. So people that have a lot of difficulties I would say, to find a new job because of a lot of personal problems. Then this is the career, I would say, the eco-conception phase. Then you have the reuse phase. So you have a product and you need to refurbish it. It has been mentioned before with the cars, but a lot of sectors you have that. You have Caterpillar, for example, in the big machineries for construction. You have a company called Elena Group in the north of France that refurbish a lot of vending machines. It's not all the time very complicated to be able to give a second life to potential products. This is what we do for electronic products at Manutan. It's about repairing, of course. I invite you to see the example of Reparseb, a joint venture between social insertion and the Group SEB, the famous Group SEB, where they created in the 19th arrondissement of Paris a big repair industry, I would say logistical center to take all the products from SEB and to be able to give a second life. Then you have also upcycling. It's about giving a new function to a product that has been taken back. And you have a lot of fun examples as well. For example, in art, you can make pieces of art out of waste. And at the end, of course, we have the recycling industry. This is very important to have a performance recycling industry, but this is the last solution before all the others, because basically you emit less CO2 if you're able to touch the minimum the product, and if you recycle, you dismantle, you use a lot of machineries, so of course you emit CO2 emissions.
Loads of examples there. I think it's really good to kind of get the creative juices flowing. For people listening today who are really interested in the principles that you've described here around circularity, and they're looking to get started in that space, what advice do you have for businesses who are looking to leap into a circular economy approach?
Yeah, well, what we can do to begin with the circular economy approach, first, it's about training, of course. You need to train people, I would say, to know what it is, to have a lot of other examples. It's a bit short today to give a lot of that. So we have incredible consulting companies or training companies for that. We just released a massive open-line course, which is called a MOOC with ESSEC. You can go online on Coursera, it's free. You can see a lot of different examples for that. And you need to create this kind of engagement in your company for that. And then you have a lot of tools to do so. For example, at the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, you can use some methodology, for example, a circular economy opportunities workshop, where you can ask yourself basic questions, very basic questions to start to dig into circular economy opportunities. And you have a framework of different circular economy strategies. So there is a list. I have mentioned some of them. You have smart material choices. You have modularity. You have the take-back principle. You have a lot of things like this. You can just see if it is applicable to your company or not, to some departments or not. So it's really the first step is quite easy. And one more time, circular economy is not for one single sector. Every company can do that because it's about reducing an efficiency, reducing your impact on new natural resources. It's just when you look at a business model, when you want to do a project inside your company, you look at the viability. Your boss is going to ask for a business plan, business model, and investment. Then you look at desire. It's about marketing. Do I have a customer for this? And then you look at the feasibility. Do I have a tech or the operational model for that? You just need to add the circularity, which is the link, of course, with the natural resources. Am I going to use natural resources that are sufficient in the soil? And am I going to use something not going to disappear in some years? Am I going to reduce at least a lot of CO2 emissions with this activity? Or am I going to make the problem worse? It's just to add, I would say, the most important one maybe, but just another question in the equation when you launch a new model, a new project, a new innovation inside your companies.
So it sounds as if there's frameworks in place and just a structure for thinking differently about what we're already doing. It's not ripping out the way people do business and applying a completely different approach. You're saying, well, you're doing good stuff anyway, we just need to introduce additional questioning at the stages that you're going through in any event.
And they are very basic questions for any strategist people or sales people. It's really, well, we all know about the design thinking that were born, I would say, in Silicon Valley some years ago. It's about putting the consumer at the center. It's about being flexible and adapt your product to the consumer. You do the same thing with the resource. You ask exactly the same questions. It's not design thinking. You need your consumer to buy your product. It's also about being resource-centric. It's not very complicated. I'm not an expert at all. I'm just somebody that tried I would say, to learn the different examples, very durable, and then to spread out the word. It's not complicated at all. It's really at the opportunity for everybody. And to begin, it's not complicated.
I love the phrase resource efficient, because I think that's a really accessible way of thinking about circularity. Like, it's about being really efficient with the resources that we've got. When we heard about it quite a bit today, especially in the previous panel about measuring impact. How do we bring measurement into a circular approach?
Well, for now, I will be bold and frank. It's very complicated. Why? Because you don't have an harmonization on that. So you have a lot of regulations. So under the waste law, you have, for example, a reparability index that will lead to a durability index as well at the European level. You have a lot of companies that try to implement new scores. For example, at Manutan, we are working on a global product environmental score to be able to give the information to our consumer about the durability or not of a product. But we are lacking a lot of data. It's not easy to work with suppliers because if you have really small suppliers, it doesn't know directly what are the data if the product has been made out of recycled material and so on. So it's not easy. You need investment, you need courage as well, and you need, of course, to bring some alliances. And there is no, I will say, big standard for that that has won the battle. So right now, the ISO organization, so AFNOR in France, is working on a new norm specifically for circularity, so maybe it's going to be the answer. But we need harmonization, otherwise the consumer is not going to understand at all what is the information if he looks at different parameters, different information throughout the market. So it's an evolving things. Of course, you have a lot of lobbying, because if you favor a potential product based on a parameter, it could disfavor another company. But it is very important to be able to have a full transparency and to bring the right information to the consumer. There's a big project at the European level, what is called a product digital passport. It's quite incredible. Few people know about that, but it's a potentiality for any consumer to go online and to have a full transparency of the life cycle of a product, where the natural resources have been extracted, where the product has been produced, if the product has been refurbished once, where, by who. So it's the eradication of the, I will say, pirate waste shipment, for example, in the third world. It's about big transparency, but of course it raises a lot of questions about tech investments, about the feasibility and the possibility for all suppliers and distributors to be able to respect this regulation.
So there's an opportunity there, and whilst we're still exploring the best way to be able to do measurement, there's certainly, it's an easy starting point for a lot of companies.
Yes.
It doesn't require, it's a radical change in thinking, but not necessarily a radical change in approach.
No.
Are there certain companies that you'd say, maybe a circular economy approach can't work? How does a company know whether or not they could implement this approach? Because we've shared a lot of examples here where it sounds like, oh, this could be a quick win.
Well, what I've said is not that it is easy and it is a quick way. I've said that the first step is easy for everyone, and to ask the questions about what could be the opportunities is feasible really for everyone. But the big problem of circular economy, as for any innovation, is not new, is the link between the short term and the long term. We are, of course, living a big inflation. We have a big problems, economical problem for a lot of different reasons. And in this kind of macro context, the first thing you do is to reinforce your current business model. You need to increase the profitability of your existing business model because you know it's working, so it's reassuring, and you don't want to test a lot of things that don't have a lot of proof for a lot of years. And this is a big problem for marketing, of course, because in the long term, you know, because this is science, that this kind of model, circular models, are going to win. One more time, the disappearances of a lot of natural resources, this is science. It's not a potential vision or projection. The prices are going to go up, we know that. But this is not the reason why right now a consumer is going to buy a durable product. You can be convinced of a big problem in the long term, but at the end of the day, buying a not durable product because it's complicated for you to realize the link between the long term and the short terms. And we need to guide our consumers. Sometimes we propose a big durable service of products. Nobody is buying it. At the ESSEC chair, I'm leading also on the circular economy. We have the sponsorship of L'Oréal, EssilorLuxottica, and the Group Bouygues. We are proposing a lot of solutions. Sometimes this is a perfect solution on paper. For example, a lot of things about VRAC, as you know. People are not buying right now because you need a lot of consumer change the behaviors. And it's not because you say you have to do that, it's better for the environment, that they're going to do it. So you need to create the best user experience, very digital experience, very cool experience, such as any startups, I would say, to be sure that you're going to succeed and that the durable products are going to win. And this takes a lot of time, of course.
What is your vision for the future? Because I don't want to end on it's a doom and gloom. Where can you see things going if all organizations and individuals within companies really committed to doing something different?
Well, I'm very convinced that we can win the battle. And when I say win the battle, it's not at all to be 100% circular. I'm an idealist, but I'm not full. It's not possible at all. You can't create perfect loops in a lot of industries. Even with the extended producer responsibility system, it's not absolutely possible. But Cycle Economy, which is a Dutch NGO, and I know they are at ChangeNOW today, so you can visit them, said that we only need to double the current circularity rate. This is today about 7% only, so to go to 14 to 15%, to be able to reduce the 45% I mentioned at the very beginning of this fireside chat review, to stay below, or to try to stay below the 1.5 degrees. So it's quite feasible to go there. The only thing I'm wondering is, are we going to go there in anticipation because of what we say now, because we know it's going to happen, or it's going to be only a reaction to big catastrophe and because big change of business models. For example, in an industry where you can plan that some natural resources are going to disappear. Well, we talked a lot before about the automotive industries. 1% of the lithium at the world level is recycled. Where there are lithiums in all batteries. So I just want to say on a strategist point of view, it's quite absurd. So are we changing that right now? Or are we waiting for the total disappearance of lithium to say, oh, the prices have increased yesterday because this is the first day we fight lithium. You know what I mean? We need to find recycled lithium. So are we going to be able to anticipate a bit? Or are we going to wait, such as for the war in Ukraine, we all had sober plans the day after the war. So we could plan before the diversification, I would say, of energy. Are we going to be able to anticipate or not? And I don't know the answers.
Well, you've left us with a really big question and something to think about there, haven't you? The good news is we only need to double circularity to be able to reduce the 45%. The pending question is, are we going to wait to be pushed to do it, or are we going to start doing it now? Ladies and gentlemen, it's Pierre-Emmanuel. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
That concludes this session. My name's been Lovelda Vincenzi. I will be back tomorrow morning in the nest, but until then, enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Bye for me for now.